What you've just heard is one of the many deaths from the monkey, the new major motion picture from Osgood Perkins, Stephen King, and James Wan. Experience it in theaters everywhere this Friday, because everybody dies, and that's life. Let's have some fun.
Hey everyone, and welcome back to Big Mad True Crime, where we get big mad over true crime. I'm your host, Heather Ashley, and today's case is out of Columbia, South Carolina. Small talk sucks, so let's dive in. "15-year-old Gabrielle Swainson, also known as Gabby, was basically the dream daughter. While her parents weren't together, she was still extremely close to both of them. Her father, a long-haul truck driver in Virginia, kept in close contact with her, but she lived full-time with her mom, Elvie, in Columbia. Gabby was her mother's only child, and she worked hard as a workman's comp claims adjuster to provide everything Gabby could ever need, including their beautiful 5-bedroom house in the middle of a giant suburban subdivision. Gabby had big dreams and a big drive to go with it. According to WIS-TV, she was an honor roll student in high school taking college courses and was actually a part of an Elite 21 program, which was for students who wanted to pursue a career in medicine. On top of being the student that every teacher wanted, she was also just cool. She had a flair for style, would pair most of her outfits with her signature black bow tie, and according to The State, which is a publication, Gabby loved playing guitar, Katy Perry, and had just made it onto the JV cheering squad for her upcoming 2012-2013 sophomore year of high school. It never crossed anyone's mind that she'd go missing before the school year ever began. Friday, August 17th was the start of what seemed like a pretty normal but exciting summer weekend. According to The State, Gabby went to her weekly guitar lesson, and after, her mom took her to get her nails done. She wanted to look her best because for the first time ever, Gabby was going on a date. It wasn't anything fancy, but she and a boy she'd known since middle school had connected over the summer, and Gabby's mom decided that the two could hang out at the mall together. Her mom dropped her off and killed some time for about an hour before picking the two of them up, dropping the boy off, and heading back home with Gabby. Once they got home, Gabby turned in her cell phone at 8:30 p.m. like she did every night, and the two watched a movie together before her mom turned in and Gabby headed upstairs to her room. In the early morning hours of the following morning, around 3 a.m. on what was now the 18th, Gabby's mom, Elvie, woke up. She started thinking about a project deadline she had for work and decided that instead of going into the office later that day or some point on Sunday, she'd just head over there now while Gabby was asleep, so she'd be back by the time Gabby woke up. That way they could spend the rest of the weekend doing mother-daughter things. Elvie grabbed Gabby's cell phone, went into her room, woke her up to let her know she was heading out, and told her that she'd be back in a couple of hours. She put Gabby's cell phone in her hand and told her to call if she needed anything. With that, Elvie headed out, drove the 10 minutes to work, spent 3 or so hours on her project, and headed back home. Around 7 a.m., Gabby's mom got back to the house, but instead of a quiet home with a sleeping teenager, she heard Gabby's alarm clock. According to the Charlotte Observer, she yelled up to Gabby's room asking about the alarm, but got no response. Elvie went upstairs to see why Gabby wasn't turning it off, it never occurring to her that Gabby wouldn't be there. According to WIS-TV, Elvie froze and then panic set in. She went through every room of the house calling Gabby's name, but she wasn't there. She called Gabby's cell phone and it rang a few times, but no one answered. When it went to voicemail, she called again, but this time it didn't even ring. It was like it had been turned off. The State reports that Elvie noticed that Gabby's alarm had been set for 5:45 a.m., which meant that it had been going off for at least 75 minutes before she had ever gotten back from work. Since this is a question I think everyone was curious about, Gabby's mom told Jane Velez Mitchell that she thought that Gabby might have accidentally set the alarm the night before, thinking that the next day was Sunday and that they had to get to church by 7 a.m. None of this made any sense. If Gabby wasn't in the house, then where was she? If she had set the alarm for 5:45, clearly she thought she had plans for 5:45. But if she was there when the alarm went off, certainly she would have stopped it from beeping, right? Elvie immediately called the police and reported Gabby missing. The Richland County Sheriff's Department responded immediately and started processing Gabby's room. What they noticed right off the bat was that nothing seemed to be missing other than her cell phone and the pajamas she was wearing when her mom checked on her earlier. Her purse, ID, wallet, and the charger for her missing cell phone were still at the house. Nothing had been taken, there were no signs of forced entry, so if Gabby was abducted, whoever came in didn't have to damage anything to do it. It took 2 days for the news of Gabby's disappearance to really hit the media, but when it did, it was this heart-wrenching story about how Elvia and Gabby's dad, who had come down from Virginia, had spent the entire weekend searching for their daughter. The Find Gabby Facebook page was created, and the hashtags Find Gabby and Find Gabs started making their way around the internet. The page asked everyone if they'd change their profile photo to Gabby's for 24 hours, not forever, just long enough for locals to start noticing and asking questions. 4 days into the investigation, shit got real. I mean, it was already real, but it got FBI real. The Child Abduction Rapid Deployment Team, or CARD team, was now assisting in the investigation. And the sheriff, Sheriff Lott, was all for it. They even welcomed the private investigator Elvia had hired. Gabby's parents were going to use every single resource they could get their hands on to find their daughter. August 23rd was supposed to be Gabby's first day of school, and while that's usually a pretty exciting day for everyone entering high school or seeing all of their friends after summer break, the atmosphere at Gabby's school was really heavy. Instead of worrying about what everyone was wearing or who they were going to sit with at lunch, the only thing on anyone's mind was, where is Gabby? With damn near everyone in the surrounding counties and people around the country learning about Gabby's disappearance and the fact that the FBI was now involved, the sideline analysis of her case began. They wondered if Gabby had a boyfriend and if it was possible she'd run off with him. Gabby did not have a boyfriend, and the boy she'd gone on a date with the night before was absolutely not involved in her disappearance. They wondered about her friend group and whether or not they might know where she was, but none of them did. So then it was social media. Had she met someone online? If so, were there DMs or messages that might indicate where she went? The PI told Jane Velez Mitchell that she had combed through Gabby's social media and it came up empty. There was a mention of someone she had a crush on recently who had texted her, but it didn't seem to really hold any significance. It also came out that Gabby's mom's ex-boyfriend had been helping repair some water damage on their floors and had cut their grass recently, but when asked about it, the PI said that he'd been interviewed by police. Running out of theories, everyone seemed to circle back to the same conclusion, that Gabby was taken from her home in the middle of the night while her mom was at work. But why that night? It wasn't like her mom regularly went into work at 3:45 in the morning. Who would have known she'd be gone? Was it just a coincidence that Gabby was alone in the house, or had someone been watching? Who else would have known that Elvie was heading into work that morning? Sheriff Lott quickly transferred Gabby's case out of the missing persons unit and over to the major crimes division, telling the Charlotte Observer, "We've put our best people on this. We're going to work this like it's something bad in the hopes that it turns out to be something good." He said there was no indication that Gabby left her house voluntarily and that more than 36 county and federal law enforcement agents were working her case 24/7. The searches for Gabby were constant. It seemed like every day there was a new one, with new volunteers stepping up to help. Her mom made a simple missing persons flyer with Gabby's photo and some phone numbers to call if anyone saw her, and people were encouraged to print them out and hang them up in their area. According to WIS-TV, more than 7,000 flyers were hung within 5 days of her disappearance. Elvie did an interview with the station and told them that she can't sleep, that at night, instead of falling asleep, she gets in her car and drives around calling out Gabby's name. While the sheriff's department declined to comment on whether or not they had any suspects, they did tell WIS-TV that no family members were suspects. With 6 days passed and no sign of Gabby, a reward was announced. According to the state, an anonymous donator contributed $2,000, Crime Stoppers put up $1,000, and Sheriff Lott himself donated $2,000 of his own money. There was now a $6,000 reward for any information leading to the whereabouts of Gabby. Over the next few days, countless volunteer searches were done, locals noticed low-flying helicopters in the area, and the state reported that 4 black Suburbans driven by FBI agents were seen at Gabby's house. WIS-TV also reported seeing investigators and FBI agents searching in an area in Elgin near a smokehouse. The outlet reports that her father spent his days looking under houses in abandoned buildings and ditches for his daughter. A father was having to look in ditches for his missing daughter, and if that doesn't shatter the deepest part of your soul, I don't know what will. On August 28, 2012, 10 days after Gabby disappeared, the sheriff's department held a press conference. Everyone held their breath, hoping for the best, but fearing the worst. When the camera started rolling, jaws hit the floor. They hadn't found Gabby, but they did say that they knew who took her. They named a 52-year-old man named Freddie Grant. According to a warrant obtained by WIS-TV, he had been accused of making inappropriate sexual comments towards Gabby. Freddie Grant was Gabby's mother's ex-boyfriend, the one who had worked on their floors and had cut the grass at their house the day before Gabby went missing. He'd actually been helping out in the searches for Gabby, and in an interview with the outlet, her aunt told her that when she got to Elvie's house on the 20th to help in the search, Grant was there laying on a daybed in the office and told her, "We think she's with a 19-year-old boy that had an interest in her." In the first few days, Grant helped hand out flyers, and his phone number was one of the 2 phone numbers listed on them. But when investigators cleared Gabby's family and started working outwards towards the people closest to them, instead of telling investigators about the mysterious 19-year-old that he thinks Gabby ran away with, he said, "I'm not talking to you, talk to my attorney." Why wouldn't you want to help find your on-again, off-again girlfriend's missing daughter? With his off-key response, deputies ran a report on him, and every single red flag from here to the moon was raised. According to the state, Grant joined the Army in 1979 and only made it about a year before getting charged with aggravated assault. It turns out that while he was stationed in Korea, he cut someone's face with a box cutter. While he was being arrested, he resisted and kicked an officer in the chest. Fast forward a few months after that, and while Grant was being transported, he overtook one of the 2 officials responsible for him, took their M16s, and kidnapped them. WIS-TV reports that he was sentenced to 9 years of hard labor at Fort Leavenworth, which is a military prison. Moving along with Grant's criminal history, in 1991, the station reports that he was caught on a train with cocaine and a loaded gun. In 1992, he was arrested again on cocaine charges, which was a pattern that went on for a while. But in 2006, there was a shift. WLTX reports that he allegedly hit a woman on the head with a PVC pipe. She then ran to the neighbor's house to get help, but ultimately declined to press charges. As time went on, Grant's crimes continued to escalate, and the state reports that in April of 2011, he was charged with domestic violence after his live-in girlfriend at the time, Adrienne Laster, said that he slammed her head against the side of their brick house, dragged her, and poured fuel on her. Law enforcement noted a cut on her lip, bruises, welts, and a cut on her leg. Adrienne Laster went missing in September of 2011. Adrienne's mom told Midlands Connect that her daughter wanted to leave Grant and come back home to Florida, so she wired $100 for a bus ticket, but says that Adrienne called her the next day crying, saying that Grant had taken the money. According to Adrienne's mom, the last time she talked to her daughter, she said, "He's definitely going to kill me." Her mom contacted the police, who located Adrienne with a female and seemed to be okay. But since that last contact, no one has heard from her. No one has been able to find her. Adrienne Laster was officially reported missing in March of 2012, 5 months before Gabby disappeared. As the press conference continued, the sheriff stated that Grant took Gabby to his house in Elgin, which is a little less than 8 miles away, a house that the Herald reports caught on fire in 2006. I was able to find photos of it at nextgreathome.com, and it looks like a perfect little brick rancher on the outside and a complete shell of a home on the inside. I'm talking no drywall, just studs. The only thing left was kitchen cabinets and bathroom necessities, and even that's a stretch. This wasn't a house you'd invite people to or even want anyone to see, and I can't imagine a situation where Gabby would ever go over there, let alone before 5:45 in the morning. I'm shocked that anyone lived there, let alone for 6 years. There was talk about a warrant being filed for kidnapping, but it gets a little wonky here. It doesn't look like the kidnapping warrant was served at that point, but frankly, it didn't need to be. While serving a search warrant on Grant's house just 3 days after Gabby went missing, Herald Online reports that investigators found shotgun shells on the bottom shelf of an end table and .38 caliber bullets in a drawer of a nightstand in a bedroom. Grant, being the proud owner of a felony, meant that he couldn't have ammunition. Because of their felonious find, Grant was already in custody, federal custody, and with Grant behind bars, Richland County Sheriff's Department had all the time they needed to build a case against him. And they were working on one hell of a case. Gabby and Grant's cell phone records showed when they'd left her house and headed towards his. A search warrant obtained by WIS-TV stated that though Gabby's cell phone had yet to be found, data showed that the last time it turned on was at 7:35 a.m. the morning she went missing and 400 yards from Grant's house. I know that 400 yards can seem like a lot, but cell tower pings are approximate locations and can have wider ranges in rural areas because there are fewer towers. And this was a small town. The sheriff stated a monster came in that morning and that Grant forced Gabby out, that she did not go willingly. Unbeknownst to the public, they had found blood on Gabby's bed and in another place in her room the morning she went missing. It was visible when you walked in, which explains why the police never treated her case like a missing person. It's something Elvie had to keep close to the vest until the sheriff's department felt it was appropriate to share.
What is Dax, are you?
Tracking all our cars on Carvana Value Tracker on all our devices? Yes, Kristen, yes I am.
Well, I've been looking for my phone for...
In Dax's domain, we see all. So we always know what our cars are worth.
All of them?
All of them. Value surge, trucks up 3.9%.
That's a great offer.
I know. Sell?
Sell.
Track your car's value with Carvana Value Tracker today.
The sheriff made a point to try and deflect any blame the public might throw at Gabby's mom, saying that she never could have known that Grant would do what he did. In the world we live in now, we have a lot of resources to look up the people we meet or plan on dating, but 10 years ago, they weren't as readily available. And while Grant had an extensive criminal history, I didn't find any previous news articles anywhere documenting his previous arrests. Nowadays, if someone gets arrested for littering, the local news or neighborhood pages will throw up a mugshot, but if Elvie had Googled him, I can't imagine she would have found much. At the time of the press conference, while the sheriff was speaking, there was an active search going on at a junkyard across a railroad track that ran in front of Grant's burnt-out shell hole of a house. I pulled it up on a map, and it's a pretty small business with a little building on the property and a few cars surrounded by some woods. Regardless of how small the junkyard was, WLTX reported that 60 local and 60 federal agents were searching, and they had brought dogs and equipment with them. There were a few mixed reports as to why they were there, but according to WIS-TV, they'd found a piece of duct tape with Gabby's blood, Gabby's hair, and Grant's DNA on it. There is a 0% chance that that doesn't nail you in court. Search teams stayed at the junkyard as long as they could, covering as much ground as possible, but a massive storm rolled in that night. By the following morning, the searchers were gone, the crime scene tape had been removed, and everything found had been sent off to the lab for testing. 2 days after the first press conference, another one was held, but this time, the sheriff wanted the public's help. They'd narrowed down a small window of time that Grant couldn't be accounted for on the morning Gabby went missing. They wanted anyone who had seen his vehicle at all that day to call in, and it was a pretty distinctive vehicle. A light blue 1992 Ford Escort. If they could pinpoint where he'd traveled that morning, they could narrow down the search areas. They were still holding out hope that it wasn't too late, that they could find Gabby and bring her home alive. Towards the end of that press conference, another bombshell was dropped, and it didn't have to do with Gabby. It didn't have to do with Grant's ex-girlfriend, Adrian, either. This time, it was about a 36-year-old man named Daniel Lee Wood who had been shot and killed in October of 2011, which was a month after Adrian went missing and the same month that Grant had come back into Gabby's mom's life. According to WLTX, Daniel had been shot in the front yard of a house in Lugoff, not far from Elgin, and crack cocaine had been found at the scene. We know Grant's history with cocaine, but that wasn't the most compelling part. While Daniel had been shot in another county, he just so happened to live across the street from Freddie Grant. Out of curiosity, I pulled a report on Daniel, and one of his listed acquaintances happened to be the name of Grant's late wife who died in 2004. I couldn't find any information on how she passed away. With Grant being involved in a third investigation, the state reports that his defense attorney decided that it was time to push for a gag order. Documents stated that there were 136 articles on Gabby, way to go media, and that they are the best reflection of the prejudice the defendant is suffering by the continued dissemination of information in direct conflict with these rules of professional conduct. The sheriff didn't give a single fuck and said, "What I would love to say is I'm really broke up about his suffering, but I won't. What I will say is Gabby may be suffering somewhere out there." According to WIS-TV, his defense added that the sheriff had not arrested a monster, he was trying to build one. Yeah, I don't think so. A few days went by with continued searches and a candlelight vigil, and on September 5th, there was another press conference. This time, it answered the question of how Grant could have gotten into the house. As it turns out, Gabby's mom had given him a key to do the work on their floors, but 6 or so weeks prior to Gabby's disappearance, Grant had told her that he lost it. The search warrant determined that was a lie. Of all the things not on Grant's walls, like literal walls, he did have a nail holding a key ring. The key to Gabby's house, which was very much not lost, was on that ring. They noted that they did have an idea as to how he knew Gabby was home, but declined to comment any further on that. September 8th marked 1 month with Gabby missing, but her mom was still holding on to her faith and the hope that Gabby was still alive. She had seen it before where mothers were reunited with their children after months and even years, and she was going to hold on to that hope until someone could prove otherwise. In October of 2012, Grant pled not guilty to his federal ammunition charges. Though according to the Post and Courier, his attorney said that Grant might change his plea to guilty if they don't get certain evidence suppressed. Judging by paperwork filed 2 months later, it looks like they wanted the ammunition suppressed. According to the state, they were essentially saying that the ammo was found during a search warrant for a missing girl, Gabby, who they were claiming had simply run away after having a talk about sexuality with her mom. I suppose we're ignoring the duct tape with her blood, her hair, and his DNA on it. But what do I know? They were grasping at straws, and probably because Grant could get life in prison if he was found guilty, and a judge deemed him an armed career criminal. With Grant in jail, Gabby's mom tried reaching out to him to see if maybe he would talk to her and tell her where Gabby was, but she wasn't getting any response. He was, however, responding to his own family. His mom spoke to WIS-TV and said that Grant's biggest concern at the moment was his crispy-ass house, that the bank had started the foreclosure process and they wanted to find a way to save it. Out of everything going on, he was worried about a house that even the bank would be pissed off to have. In January of 2013, Grant had his trial for the ammunition, and in a swift plot twist, his daughter actually testified. Yeah, he had a daughter. According to Herald Online, his daughter stated that the bullets were actually hers, that the shotgun shells were bought because there was weed in the box, you cannot make this up, and that the .38 caliber bullets were something she'd bought from a friend because she was afraid of her ex-boyfriend. She said she gave the gun back to the friend, but not the bullets, and that the shotgun shells and the bullets were put into a box that she stored at her dad's shell house. Even if all of that was true, she testified that she didn't put the ammunition on the end table or in the dresser drawer. Fascinating. Grant was found guilty and sentenced to 17 years in federal prison, which meant that he'd get out when he was 70, which honestly still feels like a public risk, but for at least 17 years, he wouldn't be able to hurt anyone else. It also meant that Richland County could continue to investigate Gabby's disappearance without his interference. 6 months passed with no real updates, but on July 11th, there was movement. Grant was finally charged with kidnapping Gabby, and he was given a $300,000 bond, but it meant absolutely nothing since he was serving a 17-year federal sentence. But that's not the most shocking part. Grant's daughter was also charged, but for accessory after the fact. What did she do? According to WLTX, all the way back on June 18th, a little less than a month prior, Gabby's mom got out of church and noticed that she had a missed call. It was from Gabby's phone. Thinking maybe she'd gotten free, she called Gabby's phone back and a girl answered, but it wasn't Gabby. It was someone who'd found her phone behind a Piggly Wiggly all the way out in Myrtle Beach. For anyone not from the South, a Piggly Wiggly is a grocery store, and Myrtle Beach is about 140 miles east of Gabby's house, all the way out on the coast of South Carolina. So how did her phone get there? Sheriff Lott told WACH, "We know the phone was planted there. We know that Gabby was not in Myrtle Beach. That just is a part of a plan that Freddie Grant had that he involved his daughter in." It looks like the possibility of Grant's daughter being taken down with him is what finally triggered him to muster up even a fraction of a quarter of an ounce of humanity. Grant wanted to make a deal. Gabby was dead, and he'd be willing to tell them where her body was if they did something for him. On August 8th of 2013, they brought him back to South Carolina and, according to WIS-TV, led them to a small field across the street from the Elgin Fire Department, just a mile or so from his house. That is where he buried Gabby. It was an area that had been searched early on in the investigation, and the FBI had even set up a command post there. Search crews used a backhoe and within hours found Gabby's body. The sheriff told the station that they felt like they failed Gabby, that they know they couldn't have saved her, but the sheriff said, "It hurts all of us to know that many, many people walked that area. But the way she was buried and the things he placed over top of her, no one could have known. The cadaver dogs couldn't have found her." Grant had buried Gabby's body in a hole that was 5 feet deep. Her manner of death was listed as homicidal violence, and Grant was officially charged with her murder. In court, WIS-TV reports that the solicitor stated that Grant bound Gabby's hands and face, which suffocated her, and then he buried her. The Associated Press was able to get access to some further documents detailing other things he may have done to Gabby, but since I couldn't read the documents for myself, I chose not to include them. When it came time for sentencing, there was already a deal, and not one that anyone was particularly fond of. Grant had given up the location of Gabby's body in return for a 30-year concurrent sentence, which meant that he'd be serving his 17-year federal sentence and his 30-year state sentence at the same time, as opposed to one after the other. That would make him 83 when he's up for release, which is likely a life sentence for him, but even still, 30 years just didn't feel like enough. According to WIS-TV, during his sentencing hearing, the judge said that he struggled to even accept the plea and that he only did it to give Gabby's family closure. Saying in court, "I was reminded of the words of Christ where he said in Luke that it would be better for a man to have a millstone tied around his neck and thrown into the bottom of the sea than to cause a child to suffer." Along with Grant's plea, the charges against his daughter were dropped. Gabrielle Swainson was a girl on track to change the world, whether it was as a doctor, a musician, or through her genuine goodness, and all of that was taken by a man who for decades made it clear that he was a danger to society. Gabby was laid to rest 1 year to the date of her disappearance, and it's there that the mayor spoke and thanked Gabby's parents for sharing her with the world. WIS-TV quoted him as saying, "Her legacy will go on for many years, reminding each and every one of us what we need to do to make this community a better place." For all photos and maps pertaining to this case, check out Gabby's highlight at the top of my Instagram profile at @TheHeatherAshley, and join me there tonight at 8:30 p.m. Eastern, where you go live with me and we talk about today's episode and all other true crime cases on your mind. If you like your podcast ad-free, head over to our Patreon at patreon.com/BigMadTrueCrime, where for just $1 whole a month, your episodes are totally ad-free. If you need more episodes in your life, for just $5 a month, you get a bonus episode on the first Monday of every month. All your episodes are ad-free, and you'll also receive a forever discount code for all Big Mad True Crime merch. And of course, anytime you sign up, you get instant access to all previous bonus episodes. I'll be bringing you a brand new case a week from today, and I cannot wait. But until then, we out.
Master of horror Stephen King raves about The Monkey. You've never seen anything like it. It's insane.
The monkey that likes killing our family, it's back.
Critics are calling it the most fun horror movie in years. It's a bloody, bloody, bloody fun time.
Dad, I'm scared. I know.
From producer James Wan and Longlegs writer-director Osgood Perkins comes the horror movie event of the year, The Monkey. Rated R. Now playing in theaters.